Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 4 of season 5 of the Nerds at the Square Table podcast. I'm Aslan, your host.
I'm Dylan, the co-host, and today, fellow nerds, we have a special guest with us today. This is our friend Simon.
How's it going, everybody?
So we brought Simon here today because if you couldn't help but notice the Christopher Reeve Superman figure on the table here, or on the square table, I should say.
Yep.
Today we are going to talk about Superman, specifically our top 8 rankings of actors who have portrayed and voiced the titular character in the DC universe.
So, a little bit of background information. We do not have, like, the super old versions of the character because I know I wasn't super familiar with any of those versions of the character.
I definitely wasn't either, so don't expect Kirk Allen or George Reeves to be on this list, whether...
I've only seen like a few clips here and there from YouTube and from films.
While we have no doubt that they portrayed Superman very well, we just did not grow up on them in our lives, in our childhood, so they will not be on this list, unfortunately. But still want to recognize them for good portrayals of the character because they did a very good job.
Yep. All right.
So that is why we have 8 instead of 10.
So, is there anything anyone wants to say before we get into the episode?
I would like to say thank you guys for inviting me. I'm so glad to be here today.
Awesome.
Glad to have you, buddy.
Awesome. We are very glad to have you. And we're also going to be doing a crossover on his YouTube channel, CavilorasReactions, right?
That is correct.
Well,
you guys can check me out very soon with a brand new vlog channel. And I will be uploading a brand new vlog, the very first video off that channel, and that is the adventures of MegaCon.
Yes, we are going to MegaCon Orlando 2025 tomorrow. So you guys will be seeing some footage over on his channel later on. So we'll leave a link to his channel in the description. You guys click on that. Make sure to subscribe to him because he's got plenty of content that is going to be coming up soon.
And you guys will see that quite a few weeks after we've gone, but still, yeah.
I will say one more thing, that if you guys notice, we are not drinking anything today. We're gonna have a chill night. All right, it's late at night.
A little dry night.
It's 1:20 in the morning when we're filming this, so we gotta wake up for MegaCon tomorrow. So we're just gonna chill and have a good time talking some Superman in preparation for tomorrow.
Yep. So we will link both of Simon's channels in the description so you guys can go give him a like on his videos, give him some subs, all that good stuff.
Yes. So. And for our Spotify listeners, just make sure you head over to our YouTube channel and you guys will be able to see that on there.
All right. I think that's all the stuff we need to get out of the way off the top.
Alrighty.
And so let's get into the ranking. Let's start out with our number 8.
Number 8. Now, if you guys have paid attention to our past episodes, when we are, no matter how many people we have for a topic, when we're ranking the same thing, we do a little point system that goes on through the throughout the episode. Aslan, you want to tell how exactly that works?
All right. So, based on the point system, for example, we have our number 8, which would be our last place. Each of our number 8s will get 1 point. And so on and so forth. Our 7th place will get 2 points. Our 6th place will get 3 points, etc., etc. Whoever, and we will make a final definitive list based on all of our opinions and the amount of points brought and put together all over that. So,
correct.
Once we get that, you'll be able to see what our final definitive list of all of ours averaged together would be.
Correct. Thank you for that explanation.
Yep. All right, so let's actually start off with Simon. Since you are our guest, how about you kick us off with your number 8?
Thank you. So for number 8, I put simply Dean Cain. And the reason why I put him in my opinion is because I didn't grow up watching Lois and Clark. I did see a couple episodes of his series of Lois and Clark, The Adventures of Superman, And while he did play a great Clark Kent, in my opinion, my only issue with his Superman is that it wasn't as the Boy Scout role that we see fulfilled by the later on actors that we will list, because it's something that you have to connect yourself with, and at least that's what I think. You have to or not resemble, but you have to create that link with the actor and the character as itself. Because as a comic reader myself, I see, when I read, I see a Boy Scout, someone who is ready to help, someone who is always positive, someone who is ready to help in all costs. And while he was a fantastic Clark Kent, he lacked that in Superman, and that's why I put him in number 8.
Solid.
All right, Dylan.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you there, Simon. My number 8, I'm gonna have to put Dean Cain here as well. And exactly like you said, it's not that he wasn't a bad Superman by any means. Frankly, just put it out there that none of these people on this list are a bad Superman, I would say.
Of course.
But I will agree with you saying that, Dean Cain, Lois and Clark was more of a show about Lois and Clark rather than maybe featuring Superman, I would say. So, a series that came out in the 90s, it wasn't as superhero pummeling sort of show that we always see Superman and other heroes come onto in. But I will say it again. Didn't really rely on the Superman aspect as much. But I do applaud Dean Cain just as a Clark Kent for a normal show about two people who eventually fall in love and eventually will lead on into more of the Superman world. I do have Dean Cain for those reasons at the bottom of my list.
All right, my turn. Yeah, Dean Cain for me as well.
Of course.
I agree with everything you guys have said, specifically for the reason that I have Dean Cain here at the bottom. He's the one I am the least familiar with out of all these Supermen. I didn't really watch The Adventures of Lois and Clark very much. I've seen a few episodes here and there. I haven't really dove in, so I don't really think I can bring anything of value really to the conversation on Dean Cain.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I mean, I think that show. I think Dean Cain's performance, like outside of Reeves and Allen, is probably the one that we're least familiar with. But again, that's not to say that he was bad or anything like that.
Yes.
I will say that Cain's Clark was more of a he was more of a tough romantic style Clark Kent than we've seen in upcoming actors' performances. But again, it's because of that show's main aspect with the two characters, Lois and Clark.
And going off on that topic, I think he did well going off on what they're given with like the script, with the aspect of the show, for it to be like a rom-com, and then or like one of those rom-com soap operas with the elements sprinkled in of the superhero aspect. I think what he did with the character of both the alter egos, he did well for what he was giving. So I can't necessarily give any negativity or any harsh opinions on it, because I really do genuinely think he did well for what he was doing with the role at the time.
Yeah, for sure. Alrighty.
All right,
so we all agree on number 8.
So we all agree on number 8. Number 7, let's see if we continue to agree. Let's start with Simon.
Now, this one I might get some slight heat
I also think I might get some heat for my number 7.
But I put Tom Welling on number 7.
Okay, interesting.
My reason is he was fantastic. We saw him as a Clark Kent trying to figure out his purpose and his life in this world that he is in. He's figuring out his powers. He's also coming across with these meta-humans and these other people with powers, and he's trying to guide them from using their powers or their abilities to flip on against the world, and I thought that was great. What we don't see with him is the whole Superman aspect.
Yeah.
What we see all throughout the series, and this is why I rank him number 7, is Superboy. What we see is a Superboy, or at times just a colorful blur, as he's mentioned, or he calls himself in the series, the Blur. We see him, developing the powers as the series progresses. We see him doing the saves that most superheroes would do, and a superhero like himself, and with the abilities of his, do as a superhero. What we don't see towards like the very end, or at least on some CGI moments, are like a little bit of Superman, but we don't see Superman entirely. When we do, we just get the little small glimpse at the very end, and that is it. And for that reason, I do put him at 7. I put him higher than Dean Cain because his ability to be a hero at the same time while balancing the aspects of a Clark Kent life, and then dealing with his romances all throughout the show between Lana and Lois, I thought that was great, and that's why he is number 7 for me.
All right. Nice. Yeah. So I don't know if I will get a little bit of slack for this one for my number 6. I love this guy, and he was in his film was very enjoyable to watch at the time. But I'm sorry, Simon, but my number 6 is Brandon Routh. Brandon,
you mean 7?
7. I'm sorry. Yes, my number 7 is Brandon Routh. I'm not hating on Brandon Routh. I love Brandon Routh. I really, really liked his Superman movie. I know not a lot of people did. That's definitely the one that, along with Man of Steel, was very divisive among people.
Yeah.
But I put Routh on here is because, again, that he was one of the ones I grew up with when it came to live action film. And I did like the aspect of him kind of continuing on the legacy of Christopher Reeve, kind of portraying that same version of Superman that he did, because technically Superman Returns was a sequel to the Donner cut of Superman 2, making 3 and 4 just not canon in that area. Yeah. But if I had to choose between whether I'd want to watch Superman Returns or 3 and 4 again, I'm definitely going to Superman Returns. No, the film is good. Brandon Routh's portrayal, he's a great Clark Kent. I really think he's a great Clark Kent. His Superman, it's fine, but I mean, he looks like Superman, he acts like Superman, but I still just can't get over the fact that what made the writers have the idea to make him turn into creepy stalker Superman throughout the middle of the movie, just spying on Lois and her now husband and child. I don't think Superman as the character would even consider doing that. So that's the one negative thing I have about it. But he's above Dean Cain because I'm more familiar with him and I did grow up on him, but I still like Brandon Routh a lot. He made a hell of a comeback years later when he starred in Crisis on Infinite Earths as the Kingdom Come Superman. He was great. Sure. He was great in that as both a Clark and Superman. He was amazing in that crossover. So that is another boost up for above Cain. But Routh, again, great Clark Kent. He was a fine Superman. Superman Returns completely reimbursed himself when it came to Crisis on Infinite Earths. But Brandon Routh will still always be a memorable actor to play Superman.
Agreed. But my number 7 is actually the first of the animated Supermen that are on my list.
Okay.
I have Tim Daly at number 7.
Okay. All right.
So I am more inclined to go with George Newbern over Tim Daly because I'm more of a fan of the Justice League shows than of Superman the animated series.
Yeah.
I when I was a kid, I wasn't super familiar with Superman the animated series. I didn't really watch it a ton. I know you watched it. Like, that was one of your shows.
Yes,
that you
I did.
enjoyed.
Animated series was much more familiar than JLA was.
I have to agree on that.
Yep. So I was not like super while I was like into the DC shows as a kid, I wasn't like as into all of those as I am now.
Yeah.
I am way more into DC and even just like superhero and comic book stuff now than I was as a kid. Because when I was a kid, I was all Spider-Man all the time. So, but Tim Daly, I never really felt as connected to as I did with other versions of the character. And while I don't think he gives a bad performance at all in the show, I think he gives a great performance. And I really do, looking back and now watching that show as an adult, I think he does give a very good performance. I just think there are other performances that I enjoy more than Tim Daly's, personally.
That's fair. All right. Number 6, Simon.
So for number 6, I actually have George Newbern next up. And the reason being was I did have a childhood with him. He solidified my childhood, getting to grow up with him in the Justice League animated series, having him continue on with the role, like with Superman versus the Elite, and just many, many projects, including Injustice as well. I feel like he has that tone of voice that defines Superman. Like he's a powerful voice for Superman. You can instantly identify him with Superman. He's, of course, a very fan favorite. My thing is there are times, at least in my opinion, when there's times where like the league aren't serious, like they're just either playful or like everybody's like laid back and relaxed, and his voice tends to come out as he's trying to continue to be serious, like he's trying to be like a powerful leader. And while he is, it's okay to be laid back, because Superman at times, from what I think, isn't all that serious to begin with. But his voice is amazing as Superman. You can hear the range in his emotions also the more you watch the episodes. And especially in the battles against Darkseid, you can hear the anger, the frustrations, and how upset he gets by being deceived multiple times by Darkseid. And that comes from the Superman animated series. So to go from Tim Daly and George Newbern, and then carry on what Tim had already established on his series, carrying into Justice League, he continues that perfectly well. It's just that, like I was saying, he continues to be serious at times on moments that don't need to be too serious. Mm-hmm. But other than that, he is a fantastic, one of my favorites, of course. Even though I grew up with Bud Collyer, the 1940s Fleischer Superman cartoons, George Newbern will always be one of the definitive voices of Superman for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna tag along with you on that for my number 6, because I also put George Newbern as well. Again, like Aslan was saying earlier, I'm more familiar with the animated series of Superman alone than the JLA. I still watch JLA, and I still watch JLA Unlimited, but I'm more familiar with the single-handed Superman animated series. But still, George Newbern, again, what you said pretty much nailed it. He's a great, the voice is very definitive when it comes to the character. His serious moments from that show really is probably the strongest points of it. And along with Daly, they kind of sound a little similar. But Newbern is definitely... Yeah, it's kind of hard to think about what to say that you haven't said. You pretty much nailed the whole topic with it. So pretty much what you said, I agree with wholeheartedly.
All right.
My number 6 is Henry Cavill.
Really?
Wow.
Getting controversial.
So we are
here.
getting controversial here.
So it's no fault of Henry Cavill's own,
Of course.
but his Superman was not written like Superman.
That's true.
He was not written like Superman. He was depressing. He was upsetting. But he himself, Henry Cavill, is awesome.
Of course.
Of all of the versions of Superman on this list, besides Dean Cain, I believe he's the one that feels the least like how Superman should feel. He does not give hope. Even though I love the Snyder trilogy as its own separate thing, as an Elseworlds. I don't think that worked for the main universe because he's not hopeful enough. There is one thing that I will give Justice League credit for, and he made Superman hopeful in that film. He actually made Superman hopeful in that film.
I agree with you on that.
Other than that, Justice League is a big dumpster fire piece of garbage. But the one thing they did right, besides the mustache CGI, was the characterization.
We don't talk about that.
Was the characterization of Superman. He got him right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if you see interviews with Henry Cavill, he is like, I wish I could have played a better version of the character.
Yeah.
He wishes he could. And again, I wish I could put him higher. But the way he acted was not Superman, which is no fault of his own. That was the direction and writing he was given.
Yeah.
I respect your opinion wholeheartedly. That's all I'll say.
I do too. I agree with many of your aspects. Some being the main reason why he's actually higher up on my list. But I will disagree with some of your points as well, and I will get to that.
Okay, cool.
The more we move on as well.
Yep.
For my number 5, I actually have Tim Daly right in front of George Newbern. And the reason being, going off what you were saying, Dylan, Tim Daly was my definitive voice for Superman growing up. When reading the comics, the voice that I envision when I read it is Tim Daly. He has some sort of like a smooth voice that it gives you a sense of not awareness, but like of hope and of, I don't know if it's a word, comedity or something, like you're calm. He has that tone of voice in him that makes it sound like Superman. He sounds like the big blue Boy Scout. He at times doesn't sound like he's trying to overdo it with his series or with his duties. And there's times where you'll feel for him when he gets emotional. But this is where it leans to why he's number 5 and not higher up.
Yeah.
We barely got him after like 2012, after he appeared in Justice League Doom, that being his final role. We never got the chance to actually see him flesh out his aggression, his emotions the way George Newbern did within Justice League. And I feel like he's able to if we get to see him more, or hear him more actually. But the whole reason why he's number 5 is the lack of emotion. Like take the episode of Dan Turpin's passing. Spoilers if anybody hasn't seen it. Dan Turpin's passing, while it was sad that of his passing, you don't really connect with Superman because they were close. When you go back and watch the show, Dan Turpin and Superman, they were close. And even though they butt head at times as well, you can see the rapport that him and Dan had within the show. And then when his passing came, Tim doesn't really express that painful emotion of losing a friend. However, towards the end, like on the funeral scene, I did feel for him because he showed the sadness of losing Dan. When he says, "This isn't goodbye," or "I'll see you soon, my friend," that's where it hits. That's where you start feeling the sad emotion. But for the aggression of wanting to get revenge, because Superman usually doesn't even do revenge either, but wanting to get revenge for the death of your friend, I don't feel that within him, and that's why he's also number 5.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Your number 5, Dylan.
So my number 5 is actually Tom Welling. I wish I started Smallville when around the time it came out. I was very young. I was probably 3 when that show came out. But Tom Welling, after watching it, I adore so much as Clark Kent. I think he's one of the best Clark Kents that has ever been put onto television. And I just like the whole aspect of, seeing Clark figure out his powers throughout 10 seasons of his show.
Yeah.
Whether, while as some of the aspects of that show might not be like super canon, like I'm pretty sure Clark and Lex weren't friends to begin with in the official lore.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure Lex didn't try and marry Lana in the official lore. So Smallville had its creative liberties, but still, you pick a guy who looks like a Clark Kent, and who acts like a Clark Kent. And like you said earlier, I know we don't get to see the official Superman reveal until the final episode where he pulls out the fun fact Brandon Routh suit.
Yeah.
And then, Smallville season 11 goes on to comic book. But still, I love, if there was ever an origin story to really take a deep dive and go into real depth, I think Tom Welling nailed it with Smallville. I think just the show in general is a great show. I think everybody who is in it does a great job. But Tom Welling definitely gives me very, very strong Clark Kent vibes. I do wish we could have seen him more as Superman. But to tell the backstory of Superman, to tell a big origin story of Superman, Tom Welling is really, really respected by me, and made the show as good as it was.
What I was actually going to say when I was giving my ranking on him, even when he came back for Crisis, that was also another gripe of mine, that we never got to see him. The chance that he got to come back the same way that Brandon did, it was a little unfortunate and a little sad that he still didn't get to suit up, because he gave up his
powers
for his kid's life, which I understand. But at the same time, it would have been nice to have that official glimpse of Superman as well. If you had a different suit, that's perfectly fine.
Right.
It just would have been great to see you finally as Superman to do some heroics,
Right.
Yeah.
Fair.
All right, my number 5 is one that you already talked about a little bit, Brandon Routh. So, I 100% agree with everything you said on your Brandon Routh take. I will say, even though it wasn't a lot that he was in Crisis, that little bit he was in really changed the way that it changed the way I look at Brandon Routh's version of the character.
It was a big redemption from returning.
Because if you decide to take his universe as the canon future of that, you could choose not to. You could choose to. I choose to believe it's the same one. That man has lost everything. He lost his Lois. He lost his Jimmy. He lost everybody to the Joker.
Yeah.
But he still puts on the suit, and he still gets out there, and he still saves the world. That is what Superman is. He will save the world no matter what, and he will always be hopeful no matter what.
I do like the little fun thing they added in at the end of that episode where he did the Christopher Reeve looking at the camera.
Yes, that was awesome.
That was fantastic.
That was cool. Awesome. That was cool to see in a now David Corenswet colored Kingdom Come suit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, spoiler alert: David Cornsweat's not on this list.
He is
'cause
not
the movie
on
has
this
not
list.
come out
It
yet.
hasn't come out yet, and I have completely changed my opinion on that, which I will talk about on my channel as well.
I don't love the direction they went with Brandon Routh in Superman Returns. I think he played the character fine. He did a very serviceable job with the character.
It could have been written a lot better, I will say.
It could have been. He shines as Superman in Crisis.
Yeah,
For sure.
for sure.
He shines. And
100%.
that made me want, even if it was just like a 4-episode miniseries, I want to see what Brandon Routh's Superman is up to.
Yeah.
And fun fact, I do believe, going back from some reports, and even what Mark Guggenheim or Guggenheim, however you pronounce his name, when he shared those photos of Routh in the suit, they were trying to test not just the suit, but to see how audience would react to him coming back in this newly formed or in this newly redeveloped Superman. And I think at one point they were considering to make a series of his Superman, how the new reboot from the Crisis rebuilt his life, how it brought back Lois, Jimmy, and everyone else that he lost. But I'm thinking, and I'm guessing about this. I think because of the new leadership that has taken over DC Studios, of how James Gunn wanting TV shows, animation, games, and the films interconnecting into one single universe within the Elseworlds projects coming in, he decided to cancel, or I guess the CW decided to scrap it as well. So it is a little bit of a bummer that never got made.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
All right, Simon, number 4.
So for number 4, and I actually have him for my 3 and 4, he's actually in between. Him and Henry Cavill are fighting for these slots for number 4 and 3. But I'm gonna say for Christopher Reeve first. He was the first Superman, or actually no, the second Superman that I grew up watching live action. I remember when I was 6 years old for my birthday, I got gifted the 4 DVD set of all of the Donnerverse films. And growing up and sliding it into the DVD player, watching every single one of them from start to finish, even like with the credits, he shined the most as Superman. He defined what Superman means to me. His charisma, he pretty much paved the way for what Superman should be and who he should be. He's a farm boy from Kansas who actually is from an out of planet far away from Krypton. He's trying, like Tom Welling, and he's trying to find his way into this world, and he knows who he has to be. He knows what he has to do, what his purpose is. He has to be Earth's savior. He has to be the Man of Steel. And I think from what we got from the 1970s onwards to, and I'm going to say till Superman 3, it was nothing but a great performance from him, because it's like it was the golden age era of Superman from those comics. That is exactly him. He is nothing else but the golden age of Superman. Superman 4, however, is where we start to see a little slip up, because after losing the battle with Nuclear Man, he goes AWOL. And even though it's not clear or shown within the film, it seems like weeks, if not months, that he was gone, because he had his butt kicked from Nuclear Man. And of course he came back, but it looked like at times he was giving up. And for me, Superman is not about giving up.
All right.
He's about pushing through, and he's about continuing on, like how you said for Brandon Routh on Crisis. He puts on the suit, and he continues to fight and give people hope, because that's what he is. He's a symbol for hope, going up, like mentioning like the 4 Superman films, which is the Superman the movie, Superman 2 theatrical, and Richard Donner, and then Superman 3. He gave us a hopeful Superman that we can look up to. We actually believe that a man can fly, and I thank Richard Donner for that as well, because with Mario Puzo and I'm blanking on the name, the other screenwriter. But him and his team, what they built for this Superman at the time was insane and perfect, and that is what for me is number 4 and number 3 for him as well.
I like how you didn't even mention Quest for Peace.
Yeah, we don't
we don't have to talk about that.
We don't talk about that hodgepodge.
Yeah, so for my number 4, this is where I'm gonna have Tim Daly come into play. Tim Daly, again, as I said earlier, was my animated cartoon Superman I grew up with, other than the Super Friends Superman. But the first time I was ever introduced to Superman was the Tim Daly series. I remember watching it when I was like 3 or 4, and the one thing that really makes me remember him so much is his voice.
Yeah.
I think when I think of a animated Superman, I'm always going to hear Tim Daly. I know we have other people like Jerry O'Connell who has voiced the character, but I'm always going to think Tim Daly because Tim Daly, for me, was the best animated Superman.
I agree.
I remember his look the most. He voiced a great Superman, which is what Superman should be, a great symbol of hope. Got a lot of lore into the different villains that people might not have even known about during that show. But yeah, Tim Daly, just the recognition of his voice has stuck with me throughout my 26 years of living, and you know, I've gone back to rewatch the animated series on Max in preparation for this new Superman film coming out, because I'm like, you know what, I need to relive what made Superman great in my childhood,
The glory days.
and that was Tim Daly himself.
Yeah.
Nice. So,
Getting a little husky.
getting a little husky. Yeah. So my number 4 is Tyler Hoechlin.
Really?
My number 4 is Tyler Hoechlin. So I haven't finished Superman and Lois yet. I've watched through the first season completely. I'm a few episodes into the second. But I have always liked his interpretation of Superman, even when he was on Supergirl.
Yeah.
I always thought he was a great Superman.
I agree.
Now, I didn't necessarily love his look on Supergirl,
Yeah.
but I thought he nailed the character. That is something I can say for definitely my top 4. Everyone in my top 4, I think, nails aspects that I think are definitive of who Clark Kent and Kal-El are. And so Tyler Hoechlin, also in Superman and Lois, you get to see him from a different angle, the dad angle, which is super cool to see him and how he parents his kids as a Kryptonian. And when you find out, oh, whoops, my kids have powers, so I have to teach them how to be super people. Like, it's really interesting. And so you don't only see the Superman, you see the man in him. Because when you bring kids into something and he goes dad mode,
Oh, yeah.
when he goes dad mode, he goes dad mode.
He goes dad mode.
He goes dad mode.
He handles the whole fatherly duties for sure.
He handles it. And don't even talk about if someone tries to mess with his wife. If someone tries to mess with Bitsy Tulak's Lois,
Don't do it. You're screwed right
nope,
in.
you're done. You're done. It's not just them. If anyone messes with anyone in his universe,
You're screwed.
he is Superman.
Yeah.
That is Tyler Hoechlin is Superman.
Agreed.
All right, folks, we moved on to our top 3 now. We're getting close.
All right. So for my number 3, like I was saying earlier, I have him bouncing 4 and 3, competing with Christopher Reeve for the spot. Henry Cavill. Now, growing up, I'm gonna say it flat out. Man of Steel, I never liked. Even while growing up, I never thought it was a movie that I could watch many times or binge watch a lot, like many times within the year. But it does have a soft spot for me, and it's like a whole story. My uncle and I, we were supposed to see Man of Steel the day that it was released, but he unfortunately passed away on the day we were supposed to go. And so this movie for me is like a tribute to him. It's like a symbol of him, and it's like a reminder of him for me. Now, Henry Cavill, I thought the reason why I clicked with him was he's a Superman like all the others, trying to find his way out into this world. However, the morals that Jonathan and Martha, specifically Jonathan, gave him for this in this universe, I didn't sit right with it. You had a Clark that wanted to start saving people from the get-go when he started developing his powers. That bus ride when all the students, including Pete Ross and Lana, were drowning in that lake, he wanted to save them. And even he says, what was I supposed to do? Let them drown? What Jonathan says, I don't really sit right with. Because, yeah, I get it. You don't want the government to take him away. But at the same time, you can't let innocent lives die in your hands when you have the ability to save them. And so I think that's one of the reasons why he was always not, I wouldn't say depressed, but like so down, was because so many people were downing him. So many people were against him. Yeah. He's a man, or I wouldn't say God. He's a man from outside of the world, trying to just do good and to prove that. And so many people keep doubting him. So many don't want him there. And all he's just trying to do is to prove to everyone he may have messed up when the whole Battle of Metropolis came out and the results were not great when he had to snap, of course, General Zod's neck, which I will always defend. He didn't have a choice necessarily. I defend that with that decision.
Yeah, I remember the controversy of like saying Superman doesn't kill.
I agree with that. I don't think he had a choice.
No.
He didn't.
He had to kill Zod.
Yeah.
Because he asked him, stop. And what did Zod say? If you love these humans so much, you can like watch them burn or something like that. And, that takes a toll on Clark because he also has heart for humanity. He grew up on this planet. Humanity took him in, of course, when he got sent from Krypton. And he, of course, he made the choice, snap his neck in order to save the family. Yeah. And because of that, since those actions, people would just judge him, misunderstand him, like Bruce. We see him wanting to kill him for the deaths that technically weren't even on his hands either. It wasn't his fault. He could have taken it to an abandoned area, yes. It was out of his hands when you have someone rogue like General Zod trying to kill the Earth to bring back the Kryptonian population. And that was something that his Superman was trying to prevent. And going off of what you were saying, the one reason why I always loved Justice League, I wouldn't say love, but praise, is that Joss Whedon did give us a hopeful Superman. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't just Justice League. It was also the Snyder Cut. Agreed. We see him after the whole battle with League. We see him reconnect with his roots of, even though he's comes from outside, from Krypton, we see him connect with his Kansas roots. We see him love again. We see him optimistic and hopeful again, because he now knows that he has a second chance and a redemption, and now he has to prove again to the humans, I'm not here to do any bad. I'm here to save you guys from anything. I just want to be someone you can rely on. And I think that's something that his Superman did a great job, even with the 3 movies that we got of him. I think he did a great job in just Justice League alone. That's why he is a great Superman for me. Is he's someone that is also relatable, because if you look at it, we're also in a modern world where everyone judges. Everyone's going to think you're a freak for having a talent or something abnormal about you. It's what's normal now these days. People tend to judge what they don't understand. And I think that's what made one of his Supermans relatable. He didn't give hope, yes, until the third movie, but he sure as hell was a Superman. He knew how to protect people.
Yeah.
He knew how to use his powers, and he knew how to defend people when it came to defending. And that's why I have him between 3 and 4, battling it out with Christopher Reeve. I like it.
Yeah, those are solid. Those are solid. Yeah, that's where I'm gonna have Henry Cavill as well. On my rank is number 3. I love Henry Cavill as the character. He is pretty much a spitting image of Superman.
Absolutely.
As Clark, I can beg to differ on that a little
Yeah.
bit. But again, like you said, I don't think a lot of people realize this, but it is a more modern retelling of if a thing like that were to actually happen.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, I like the turn that Zack Snyder made when making the film. I am one of those people that absolutely love Man of Steel. Henry Cavill is definitely well, obviously he is one of my favorite Supermen.
Yeah.
But I agree with the reasons of saying, like, he really doesn't give off hope that much. He does in Justice League, the Joss Whedon cut, and then for sure Zack Snyder. But with his origin story in Man of Steel, it's an inner battle between his emotions in his head.
Yeah.
Because like you said before, we still kind of see him grow up, not like Tom Welling, but flashbacks to him when he was a kid, whether he has to make the decision, okay, should I save these people? Should I not? What's going to happen? Like, and again, with Kevin Costner, Jonathan Kent saying, like, what if you did this and then you get taken away, and all that stuff. I get why, and I'm not really too big a fan of this, but I get why Snyder added the aspect that, like, he's pretty much the Jesus of that universe. I've never really seen, growing up with the Superman films and shows that I watch, he wasn't really like adored like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't mind the idea that Snyder put into Cavill's Superman, but to me that just, I mean, as a modern retelling, people probably would do that because there's the first man ever to fly by himself like that, like no rocket, no plane or anything like that.
Yeah.
And he's pretty much bulletproof. The man has super strength. I mean, obviously you would probably worship him as a god.
Absolutely.
But to me, that's just not the kind of Superman that I grew up with. But I still think Henry Cavill is a spitting image of Superman.
Yeah. Ripped from the comics. And
the way he acts like him, the way he's toned, the way the emotions he gives off as him, he's really, really spot on. I really feel like I'm watching a different variant of what Reeve gave off.
Yeah.
As well.
All right. So, my number 3. This is where I have Tom Welling.
That is good.
Smallville is quite possibly, besides Batman the Animated Series and the initial Justice League animated series, Smallville's probably my third place all-time DC shows ever.
Okay.
It's a good show.
It is.
And Tom Welling's a huge part of that. Obviously, he doesn't actually become Superman until the very end of the show.
Yeah.
But you really do get to see throughout this show the way he builds the man he's going to become. he learns all these lessons as a young man and learns how to control his powers, because there are some powers he already knew he had from the rip.
Yeah.
He knew he had super strength, he knew he had super speed. But then, as new things in his life start coming, he has to learn to overcome these new hurdles. He learns he has heat vision.
Yeah.
Oh no, I have to learn to do that.
Control this.
And I liked seeing that. I liked seeing this young man who's going to become Superman learn these lessons for himself and then be like, yeah, this is the man I want to become. I really enjoyed watching that. And in the last, like, seasons of the show where he does become the Blur and all of that stuff, like where he actually takes on the persona and has like the red jacket with the S on it and everything, and even like the trench coat look with he still had the S.
I thought that was badass
and everything.
Yeah.
I know he said he didn't like wearing that look, but I thought it was cool because
It looked cool.
it was badass.
Even though he technically wasn't Superman, you can tell like he's building that code.
Yeah.
He's building the code for when he does become Superman. And I think even in the last couple of seasons, he truly was what his Superman was going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is a lot of why I like him. I like his growth. I like his dynamics with all of the characters. He is my favorite relationship between him and Jonathan. My
agree with
favorite relationship
Yes.
between Clark and Jonathan
I do have to agree with that.
is Smallville.
I'd have to say that, yeah.
That is solid.
And it's also my favorite dynamic between Clark and Lex as well. Because, spoiler alert, Michael Rosenbaum's my favorite Lex Luthor ever. He is my favorite version of the character.
He played a very, like a fantastic Lex Luthor.
Yeah,
I got
fairly so. He is my favorite Lex Luthor, I will say.
Yep. But Tom Welling's not my favorite Clark Superman.
Number 2, Simon.
Now for number 2, you actually had him in the back, and you actually had him. It's sort of in the middle. I have Brandon Routh.
Okay.
He was actually the first Superman I saw in theaters, and I remember I was just 2 years old. I have no idea how. This was one of like my first memories. My parents took me to go see Superman Returns in theaters. And I remember as a child, I had from just the stickers, all the toys, the bed sheets, trading card, all of it. I loved Superman Returns as a kid. And looking back at it now, Superman Returns is a perfect sequel or soft sequel to the Donner films. And to set it as a direct continuation, ignoring the events of Superman 3 and 4, but they still get to eventually, it's something that is, I wouldn't say perfect, but something great for the universe, because it started out on a high note, ended up on a poor note after the 4th movie, which we still won't talk about. And Superman Returns felt like a nice addition to that film. We have, like, Ralph instantly just looks like Reeve, sounds like Reeve. You have a perfect actor here that will fill the shoes and does it perfectly well when he is portraying Clark and Superman. He has the perfect dynamic of Clark. He is like the humble little geeky boy from Kansas. He is the strong and powerful and hopeful Superman. Now, granted, that whole stalking thing, throw that out the window.
Yeah.
You have the best Superman movie ever, because I think it had the perfect blend of action with the not just the plane scene, but like him saving Metropolis from Lex's earthquake because of the land scheme. He was not even I wouldn't say battling his emotions, but he was conflicted with himself because he wanted to say goodbye for leaving the earth and leaving Lois alone after having their child also, which he didn't even know about either. he wanted to apologize for leaving her so cold and alone to go see if his Earth exists or if another version of his world exists. And so going into Crisis, I found that whole redemption arc to be beautiful because, like you said, when the Joker gassed him, and actually not spoiler alert, but a fun idea, it does show out to come to prove that since he's a continuation of Christopher Reeve, in the comics it is confirmed that Michael Keaton and him share a universe titled Earth 789. And in that universe, from the comics that they've done, it looks like the Jack Nicholson's Joker had survived that fall from the film.
Mm-hmm.
And he was secretly running around doing his antics, causing havoc. And then when that scene in Crisis comes, when he says, the reject from Gotham felt that we didn't cover him enough. So what he played was what he called a practical joke. He gassed the building. He wanted to pull off a final big bang before Batman got to him. Mm-hmm. And of course, this is so much different from Injustice, why I say Brandon Routh is better, because he's something that Injustice Superman is not. He doesn't give in to the grief. He doesn't give in to his emotions. He doesn't look for vengeance. He doesn't look to change the world to his liking. He continues on with a smile on. He tries to continue on with a light or with a smile on his face.
Yeah.
And pushes through. And even when he speaks to Bitsy Tolik's Lois, when she asks him, "Why'd you add black to the suit?" What he says there is instantly defines him as one of the greatest Supermans ever. Because, Lois, even in the darkest times, hope cuts through. Hope is the light that guides us. That right there, that is what a true Superman is. That is something that Superman would say, and that is Superman in general. He pushes through. He keeps fighting no matter what. Yeah. He wants everyone to live a life filled with hope. He wants to know that despite the hard times, despite whatever may come, hope will always rise up, and that's why he is my number 2.
Yeah, really solid. My number 2, I'm gonna go ahead here and put Tyler Hoechlin. Yeah, I really am solid with Tyler Hoechlin. I need to watch the rest of Superman and Lois, but just from where I've been so far, and where I've gotten to, yeah, he pretty much is to me, he is the best Clark Kent Superman we got on live action television.
Yeah.
The way he looks in Supergirl, I wasn't too big a fan of, so I agree with Aslan there. But when Superman and Lois came around, I think Tyler really put the charm into the character. He is a normal boy from Kansas, and who also takes on the persona of Superman. And it definitely helps more. It's definitely a more lighthearted show than taking a complete direction from the Snyderverse, which is what a Superman show should be, in my personal opinion. Because Superman is not a dark character. He can be at points, but like in the main lore, just the normal Superman is just, he's fun, he's hopeful, he's helpful, he's nice, and Tyler Hoechlin checks all those marks in there. I think Superman and Lois is probably the best live action Superman show that has been made so far. Tyler Hoechlin, he looks the part, he portrays the part super well. I have nothing but good respect and praise for Hoechlin.
All right. My number 2 is George Newbern.
Oh.
So
way up there.
The way I think of Kevin Conroy as Batman is the way I think of George Newbern as Superman. For myself. I know you guys like Tim Daly more because you guys grew up with Superman, the animated series, which I get that. And I didn't. I grew up with Justice League and Justice League Unlimited.
Yeah.
Over that, which kind of makes sense why I would have him over Tim Daly.
Absolutely.
But George Newbern, in my opinion, is to Superman what Kevin Conroy is to Batman for me. When I'm reading the comic books, I hear George Newbern's voice when I'm doing that. But I don't see George Newbern. I see somebody else. You guys probably can both already tell who I see.
We can tell.
He's
right here.
He's
right here.
Even though George Newbern is the voice I hear, I just can't wait to talk about the GOAT. I just can't wait to talk about the GOAT. So, it is very clear that you do not have the same
number one as we do.
I have Tyler Hoechlin for my number one for so many reasons. And going off on what you both said about his first appearance, the suit was not it. However, it was such a refreshing take from Dawn of Justice, because that really was a dark movie. But then his first appearance, when Hoechlin puts on the suit and he's in season 2, it's so refreshing because he's so bright, hopeful, optimistic, something that felt like was missing in BVS, of course, and in the Snyderverse at that time. So the more we saw him in like the season 2 finale and then Elseworlds and then Crisis, it was something that, wow, you're seeing him evolve from a hero to a husband, because they got engaged in Elseworlds and then married, of course, by the time Crisis happened, to having their kid and then him becoming the father. With the whole reboot, of course, him being taken out of Earth Prime and into a new universe now, which I think is Earth TUD 25. Him and Lois now raising 2 teenage twin boys. We see that when Superman and Lois starts. We see him not only balance the fate of the world and the entire world on his shoulders and in his hands, but the fate of his family's lives and his friends' lives at the process. Because we see a man who loves his family, but he can't be there because of not what is a burden, but a responsibility and the commitment he already had with the world. He has to be the Earth's only savior. And then while the show continues on, like you were saying, we see him, he brings out the badass dad. He brings out dad mode. You put a gun on Lois Lane. No, he doesn't care who you are. He will tip you over the diner table of Vicky Mays. And he will put your ass in your place, because he loves his family. He cares about his family. You see that. What you see in Tyler Hoechlin is something that you don't see with other actors. Yeah, we see Superman, we see Clark Kent. What we never saw in these previous incarnations and iterations of Superman was the father.
Yeah.
We see Tyler being the father while being the hero, while being the husband, while also being the reporter that we all know and love.
Yeah.
And he balances it and juggles it so perfectly. And by the time you get to season 4 with what happens in those events, and I know you haven't seen the show, so I won't spoil anything.
I haven't seen all of it. I said I've got for where I got into. I've liked what I've seen.
Yeah, and from the events that happen in season 4, you start to get really emotional because you're instantly grabbed in with his portrayal. You're connected instantly. Just within season 1 alone, you fall in love with his Superman. I know because my mom fell in love with him just by the first episode. My friend Kayla, which I know she will be watching this because I'm sending her the link, she fell in love with Tyler Hoechlin, I think, with just the series alone. She loves his Superman. She didn't know what to expect going in, and so she even thought this isn't anything like we've seen before with Superman or any of the superheroes. This is something great. And because of like the whole cancellation on part of the CW and James Gunn, that's one of the reasons why I was so harsh and so skeptical on David Cornsweat's upcoming portrayal, because I wanted more of Tyler Hoechlin. I feel like we should have gotten more, and we should have gotten more with his Superman. And I'm glad that it went on a bang and on a higher note, because these portrayals are just so loved and cherished when you ask me about it, and that's why he's number one on my list. And not to mention Michael Cudlitz as Lex. My favorite Lex Luthor, despite the actor and the issues he's done, Kevin Spacey was always my favorite Lex Luthor, because he wasn't even though he's supposed to be the Jane Hackman version, he's not. He's brutal. He is serious. I love a Lex who can be a businessman and very brutal. Michael Cudlitz took over with that. And when you see him in season 3, when he was wrongfully convicted of a crime he didn't commit, and he's out for getting revenge, you're shocked. You don't know what to expect, because it's a juggernaut move that he does. He does it out of surprise and shock, and it's just electrifying, his Lex Luthor. And Michael Cudlitz did a phenomenal job as Lex Luthor. So to pair him with Tyler Hoechlin was the best idea that the producers had. And that is what solidifies this show as the greatest Superman project that was ever made or ever exists. And that's why he is number one.
That's solid. Very solid. All right, Aslan.
All right, so Christopher Reeve, right?
Let's gush about
the
Christopher
goat.
Reeve here.
The goat.
This man right here.
The man who made us believe a man could fly.
One who made us believe that a man could fly, Mr. Christopher Reeve right here.
If there is one human being that everyone sees as synonymous with Superman, it is Christopher Reeve.
It is absolutely Christopher Reeve. I think, I think his first and his second films were great. We're not going to talk about 3 and 4 because that's just, that went in a whole different direction.
Yeah.
But just from the get-go, with Christopher Reeve, I can tell the difference between the two personas that he's taking on when it comes to Clark and Superman. They both, if I've ever seen a Superman project where one actor looks different as both characters, it's Christopher Reeve. The way Christopher Reeve acts when he is the kid from Kansas, when he gets his job at the Daily Planet, he's jittery, he's nervous, he's a bit of a bubbly character, trying to introduce himself, especially with Lois and everything like that. That's who Clark Kent is. And then with Superman, Superman, you feel safe when you're actually encountering him. Like, he's out there, he's portraying himself as your protector, saying like, don't worry, I got you. The way that he just acts around, he's very calm. He's like, listen, this is what I do. I'm here for a reason. My father always believed that I was here for a reason, and this is who I am choosing to be. And with the way Christopher Reeve portrays him is incredible. The stories that he's being put through, the first one with growing up into that character, him learning about his Kryptonian parents, eventually leading into Superman, meeting the eventual love of his life, Lois Lane, and then the first villain, him fighting off with Lex Luthor and everything like that. I just think, the first Superman film is just golden peak for me. But Christopher Reeve, I have really no complaints. If anything about Superman 3 and 4, he's the best part about both of those things.
For sure.
No, he played it super well. He's nice. You feel safe. If you were to ever encounter somebody like that, it's what Superman truly, truly should be. Again, he's the reason that we believed a man could fly, and Reeve pulled it off perfectly.
For sure.
Yeah. There's a reason they made a whole documentary just about this guy
Which was
and
well
called
deserved.
it Superman.
Yeah.
I cried in that documentary. So
It's because, like, even if you look at his life even outside of the movies themselves, he was
an actual
Superman. He was Superman. I don't think there's a person, just a genuine human being, that you could have gotten to be more genuine as Superman than Christopher Reeve was. I don't know how to say it other than he is Superman.
Yeah.
Like, he is Superman incarnate. Like, that is what he is.
The man was born to play the role.
He was born to be Superman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have the final list here
Yes.
I do too.
of
Well, I'm actually switching somebody because they finally ended up reaching the number 3 spot for my list.
Okay.
That is Christopher Reeve.
Okay.
I am moving him and Henry Cavill around because they were battling it out, like I did say. But after hearing your point and your point as well,
It popped him up.
it moved him up number 3 because he did, even outside like the films, and we see it in the documentary, despite the condition he had to go through and the struggles of not being able to walk, losing his hair, he couldn't even talk within his final days as well. That shows how Superman impacted him and what he became and who he became. He actually became a Superman. Even though throughout his conditions, he fought and he still pushed through to the very last breath. That right there was a true Superman as well.
Yep. All right, so I have the final list. I tallied up all the points. So, in 8th place officially on the final definitive list, with 3 points, we have Dean Cain.
Okay.
We have a tie for 6th and 7th place, and it's really funny because it's both of the animated ones. With 11 points apiece, we have George Newbern and Tim Daly.
Nice.
In 5th place, with 12 points, Tom Welling.
Okay.
In 4th place, with 14 points, Brandon Routh. In 3rd place, with only 1 point up, 15, Henry Cavill.
Yeah.
Number 2, with 20 points, Tyler Hoechlin. And by 1 point, with 21 points, we've got Christopher Reeve, number 1.
The almighty definitive pick for the best Superman that has ever been portrayed on screen is this man right here.
The GOAT.
May he rest in power.
Yes.
And thank you for a wonderful childhood with your films. Thank you for being an inspiration to everyone. Thank you for being that beacon of hope that one can look up to. We love you, Chris.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Man will be missed.
Yep. Well, this is a pretty fun little episode.
It was.
Yeah.
This is probably, I think, our longest one to date.
Not to date.
Not to date. That's fine.
We've had 3-hour
in this
episodes.
season, I should say, is probably our longest so far.
Probably. I would agree with that. Well, guys, that's all we got for today.
That's all you got for
Well,
today.
I'm Aslan.
I'm Dylan.
Simon,
To all our fellow nerds out there, we'll see you next time.
peace.